What's up, guys? It's Baseball Nerd. We're gonna do my Hall of Fame ballot today. Gonna be filling it out and seeing who I think should make the Hall of Fame this year in 2021. We have a lot of guys coming back and a lot of new guys to look at. So I kind of break down who I think should be in. It's based off of name value, based off of guys' careers. Guys that I think just should be in there. Just looking at their careers and who they were in the baseball world, and then looking at some of their stats as well, and kind of mixing and matching that. I'm not going to go super in depth over every single person I picked. I did use all 10 votes in my own ballot, but I'm not going to go super in depth over everybody. Not going to be a super long video. But if you guys like this stuff, you like baseball, MLB The Show, any of this stuff, predictions, rankings, going over stuff like this, I love this stuff. So if you do too, please like, subscribe, turn on the notifications, and come back for more. But we'll get right into it. My list, I'll give my 10, and then we can go into a couple things I want to say about some of these guys. My 10 are as follows: Barry Bonds, got to be in there. Roger Clemens, Todd Helton, Sammy Sosa, Manny Ramirez, Billy Wagner, Gary Sheffield, and Curt Schilling, Jeff Kent, and Scott Rowland. That's my 10. And I think there's a couple guys that should also be in there. Andy Petit, I think, should make it, but he's still in his third year. He's got time. Andruw Jones, this is his fourth year. He's still got time. And a couple of those guys I named are in their ninth year. I think 4 of them are. So, yeah, those guys I think got to get in this year for sure. Starting off with Barry Bonds, a big controversy if he should make the Hall of Fame. And I think, man, if you look at the stats, if you look at everything, he's been known as the greatest hitter to ever live by people that don't account for steroids and don't care about steroids. People forget he never tested positive during his career. He has, obviously, people have come out and said he did steroids. It's kind of been a known thing now that he definitely took steroids. So did a lot of guys in that era. Pitchers, hitters, all around, people were taking juice. People have been doing stuff to cheat this whole time. I don't think should necessarily take away, because I believe without the steroids, he still would have been one of the greatest hitters of all time. At least for his generation, would have been one of the greatest hitters of that time. So I think unless you know everybody in the Hall of Fame for sure never did anything to cheat or give themselves an advantage, you can't leave out one of the greatest hitters to ever live. And if you look at him, dude's got a 162.8 WAR. That's 30 points above the next guy in this Hall of Fame ballot, and way above most Hall of Famers. There's also a stat called, just the abbreviation HOFS, and it's kind of was created to give you a scale 0 to 100, telling if a guy should make the Hall of Fame. 50 is about the average for people in the Hall of Fame, and Barry Bonds is at 77, so he should by far, in my opinion, be on the Hall of Fame. In the Hall of Fame, excuse me. He had 60% of votes last year and needs 75 to make the Hall of Fame. I think he was third last year out of the people that are coming back on percentages wise. I think Roger Clemens and Curt Schilling were both above him. But yes, I think Barry Bonds got to be in there. Home run leader, a bunch of other stuff. He's just got to be in there. Roger Clemens, really good pitcher. This is his 9th year as well as Barry Bonds. He had 61% of votes last year, right above Barry. And he's got a 73 on the Hall of Fame scale. And a 139.2 WAR. Just insane. Got to be in there. Todd Helton, Sammy Sosa. I think Todd Helton definitely is a little underrated by some people. Really good first baseman. This is his 3rd year on the list. He had 29% of votes last year. He's also got a 59 on the Hall of Fame scale and a 61.8 WAR. Very good WAR. I know WAR is not everything. I also don't think batting average is everything. I don't think home runs is everything. I think it's obviously an accumulation of all of that stuff together. But Todd Helton's just an amazing hitter, was a very good guy for the Colorado Rockies for a lot of years, and I just believe he should be in the Hall of Fame. As well as Sammy Sosa, there's stuff going around about him too, obviously, with advantages and things he did to get where he was. And he's obviously not as good a hitter as Barry Bonds was in his career, but still, Sammy Sosa had a very, very, very good career. He got 13% of his votes last year, and this is his 9th year on the ballot, so he's coming up on that 10th year and being able to be eligible for the Hall of Fame. He's got a 52 Hall of Fame scale and a 58.6 WAR, so not amazing, but technically by stats, he should be in the Hall of Fame compared to other people that are in the Hall of Fame. And yeah, moving on, we got Manny Ramirez, who is just a stud. He was an amazing hitter. I got to watch Manny Ramirez. Some of these guys I didn't see. Barry Bonds, I barely remember. I was born in 1998, so I watched him play my Angels in 2002 for the World Series and watched us win, but I was 4, so I was probably drinking out of a sippy cup and stuff like that. So I don't really remember. I don't know if I was drinking out of a sippy cup when I was 4. Probably not. But anyway, I was young, so I don't remember all these guys playing. I do remember Manny Ramirez though, and watching him at the end of his career, and he's just a monster at the plate. and he had a bunch of swag. I just love the way he played the game. He's 69 on the Hall of Fame scale and 69.3 WAR. He played a little less years than Barry and Roger Clemens and some of these other guys who are at 22, 24 years in the bigs, but he still had 19 years. 28.2% of the votes last year. This is his 5th year on the ballot. I think he should be in, and I think he will have a very good chance of being in this year, if not next year. And yeah, next going got Billy Wagner. This one's kind of if you go by stats, I'm going more by name on this dude. If you go by stats, it's hard to compare him to other people on the ballot because he was a closer. And it's hard because all these other pitchers, have higher WARs or have higher this or higher that. He's not very high on the Hall of Fame scale and not very high on WAR, but he is 6th all-time in saves. And I remember him on the Astros being very dominant and very good. And I know very good, very dominant. But I just remember him being, throwing really hard, closing out a lot of games. If you're number 6 on the all-time save list, he's ahead of some other guys. I believe he's ahead of Dennis Eckersley or Raleigh Fingers, one of those two, I can't remember, who are both in the Hall of Fame already. So I do believe Billy Wagner should be in the Hall of Fame. This is his 6th year on the ballot. He had 31.7% of votes last year. That was pretty high for this group. I believe that's 5th on the group, returning from last year. And yeah, so stats aren't everything for this guy. He is 6th on the all-time save list. I just believe he's a name that's very well known. He 6th on the all-time save list. I keep saying that, but it's a big feat to get that high up, and he's passed up some of those other guys that are already in the Hall of Fame on that list or strikeouts list and stuff like that. So I just believe he was so dominant for it wasn't a huge amount of time, but dominant for a long enough amount of time, and I believe he should be in the Hall of Fame. Moving on, we got Gary Sheffield. And Sheffield's in his 7th year on the ballot, 30% of votes last year. He's got a 61 Hall of Fame score on the Hall of Fame scale and a 60.5 WAR. These WARs and Hall of Fame scales are pretty close for most guys, except for Clemens and Bonds, who just have such a high WAR that they couldn't be that high on the Hall of Fame scale. It's not possible. But yes, Gary Sheffield, going by stats and WAR and Hall of Fame and all these other things, he's actually like the 3rd best hitter on this whole list, looking at the guys that are eligible. And I think he's just got to be in there. I asked people that don't study or look into baseball as much as I try to, and a lot of these guys, obviously name value is not everything, but a lot of guys just know how great Gary Sheffield. I was talking to my uncle about him. I think he needs to be in there. I think he deserves to be in there. Moving on, we got Curt Schilling, and I had a debate here. This is his 9th year on the ballot. I think he needs to get in. He had 70% of votes last year, so he's very close. He's a 46 on the Hall of Fame scale, 79.5 WAR. He's got the 3rd highest WAR, but he's way down here at about 9 on the Hall of Fame scale, just because he wasn't. I think he's got a little bigger name value than his actual production. I think he's actually not that much better than Andy Pettitte. They're probably very close, so I think if he gets in, Andy should too. But Andy's in his 3rd year; he still has time to get in, and yeah, I think Curt Schilling's got to get in. He's one of the best pitchers on this list, and compared to other guys in Hall of Fame, he definitely should make it in. Moving on, we have Jeff Kent, and I know some people wouldn't pick Jeff Kent to make it. There's other guys that can make it. Like I said, Andy Pettitte deserves to be in there. I think Bobby Abreu should make it in there at some point. Andrew Jones, obviously. I'm a huge Torrey Hunter fan. I don't necessarily know if he should make it in the Hall of Fame, but there's a lot of other guys, first-year guys too, Mark Buehrle, A.J. Burnett, some guys like that should make it. Maybe not necessarily, but maybe should make it over Jeff Kent in most baseball people's minds. But Jeff Kent, for me, this is his 8th year on the ballot. He had 27.5% votes last year, and he's a 51 on the Hall of Fame scale, 55.4 WAR. He's one of the top guys on this whole list, and he's just very underrated in my opinion. He's also, this is a stat, I think he leads all second basemen all time in home runs. I think if you do that, man, you definitely deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. Obviously not solely off that statistic. If he did that but batted a career 200 or 190 and struck out the most, stuff like that, then it wouldn't matter, play terrible defense. But he didn't. Dude was a stud, and I think he definitely deserves his credit, and I would love to see him make it in the Hall of Fame. Last guy we have is Scott Rowland, and he is, I believe this is Scott's 1st year on the ballot. No, 4th year, my bad. Terrible. 4th year on the ballot, he had 35.3% of votes last year. He's 40 on the Hall of Fame scale and a 70.1 WAR. Lower on the Hall of Fame scale, really high on the WAR. Super underrated dude. Scott Rowland is a guy that I thought maybe, could be replaced some other guys with Andrew Jones or A.J. Burnett even maybe, or Omar Vizquel. I'm not a huge guy on him. But some of those other guys that could potentially take his spot here at the end of this list. But the more I was researching this and not just looking at the stats, I was looking at what other professional ball players or coaches or GMs or owners, any guys like that, Hall of Famers, stuff like that, that they were all saying that Scott Rolen is one of those underrated dudes that just did everything right, you know, could hit for power, contact, played a freaking lockdown third, just did a lot of really good stuff. And not just a good player, because obviously the Hall of Fame shouldn't be full of just good players, it should be full of Hall of Fame players. And they were saying, you know, he's underrated in the fact that he does a lot of things, pretty much everything, at a great level, and a couple things at an elite level, and maybe his name doesn't get brought up as much as some of these other big names, but that he definitely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. And I do take some of that into account, you know, what other players say, what other coaches say, because obviously they know baseball better than any of us do. Otherwise, we'd be in their position, right? So I think that came into account a lot for me. Scott Rolen, 4th year, 35% of votes last year. I don't know if he'll make it this year. I think he will make it within his 10 years on the ballot. So yeah, that's my list. Hopefully it was here for most of the video, in the middle of the video, showing you guys my votes, or maybe up here, I don't know, one of those spots. But hopefully it's up there showing you guys who I would vote for. And let me know what you guys think down below, who you guys would vote for, who you wouldn't vote for, if you disagree with some of the guys I picked, if you'd swap some guys out, if you wouldn't use all 10 votes. There's a guy that I saw his article. He's an anonymous Hall of Famer. He said nobody on this list deserves to be in. Obviously, he doesn't like any of the steroid era guys or stuff like that. I don't have a biggest gripe with that because I think there's been a lot of guys. There's still guys cheating to this day. So unless you know everybody's clean, I don't think you can keep out the best hitter of all time. Last thing I'll say about it. But thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe, like I said earlier, and I'll be back with another video soon.